Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to discuss 5 ways that you can fight back against this man-made depression. So I had to come into town today. You may hear a bunch of sirens, which is just more testimony to the fact that East Tennessee is way overcrowded and you cannot sustain overnight tripling of the population without a lot of increase in crime and accidents and lots of other stuff. It's not fun to be in town. Don't enjoy it. Anywho, we need to discuss the second depression that we're now going through. There is such a disconnect with the economists and the people who write the news, write white papers, and essentially the Richmond, north of Richmond. There's a huge disconnect with what they deem the overall economic status to be versus what's the lived actuality of the majority of Americans right now. So there are 5 practical ways that I have that I want to discuss with you today. And they are, number 1, providing your own services as a way to fight back. Number 2, growing your own food as a way to fight back. 3 is bartering and trade. 4 is being wary of the experts. And then 5, asking for resources that you paid for. So first off, we're going to talk about providing your own services as a way to fight back against this. So part of the situation that we found ourselves in can be traced directly back to the institution of the fiat currency, which started with the ensconcement of the Federal Reserve in control of our money supply, right? That is not the purview of a private central bank. Our Congress is, per the Constitution, supposed to be the one in charge of printing and coining money, right? Because that way the people have some sort of stopgap measure to recall members and to have their voice be heard, and really to prevent warmongering incessantly and a whole bunch of domestic spending from saddling them and their children with debt. When we unhooked the coinage of money away from Congress, the oversight of Congress, and then 2, the creation of fiat currency based on effectively nothing, right on cue, we get problems. And so part of those problems include, but are not limited to, a de facto non-free market system. We do not live in a free market system, and our money is, each permutation around the monopoly board, worth less and less. And so as we go throughout the video today, I want to give you some options for fighting back against this. Because no matter, I'm telling you this, there are people who are hustling harder, working harder than their parents right now, who have half the functional wealth of their parents, and it ain't because they're lazy, it's because their money is garbage. The United States dollar is garbage. The rest of the world has not unhooked from it yet, right? And when they do, that's gonna be the nail in the coffin. So before the depression turns into an absolute freaking catastrophe, one of the things that we can do is to provide our own services. And this is the first, like I said, in the 5 of the recommendations that I have. What does it mean to provide your own services? Well, frankly, it means not using the services of institutions that are hooked onto the federal government. The biggest and most obvious one is the medical industrial complex. How can you say that as a nurse, Patriot Nurse? I'll tell you, being classically trained as a nurse in the white coat world, in the white coat ways, you know, I went through the program, I graduated magna cum laude from a wonderful program. And I worked several years clinically in various different specialties. But once I saw that we're not really helping people, and outside of emergency and trauma, nobody is getting better, their wealth is only getting extracted. And then I also saw, actually, as a matter of fact, working as a nurse, when you're giving away 30 to 40% of your care to illegals, you're working as a nurse to pay taxes to pay yourself. It's the snake eating its tail. And so it's a losing battle, right? And it's not just because of the illegal immigrant situation, and it's not just because of the fiat currency or the expansion in useless non-value added professions like hospital administrators. If your money is worth less, your services are going to cost more, right? So that includes healthcare. And as the United States population is getting older and older, older generations may have proportionally more wealth in real estate, but I'm here to tell you, you're not going to be able to hold on to it if you're not well. But that's the plan, you see. The plan has been overall to create this gulf and this huge chasm between the generations as far as wealth. Millennials and Gen Zers, and yes, generations matter, right? I'm going to bring this into the so what factor because generations are really the culminated shared experiences of historical events across aggregates of people depending on when they were born, and it matters. So if it matters in the way that money moves in economies, you can bet it matters as far as ways to fix problems. If you are over the age of 55, you are going to have your wealth siphoned away primarily through the medical industrial complex if you let them do that. So part of fighting back against this is to provide your own services and to be your own doctor, so to speak, right? It used to be that we were much more skilled in this functionally, and another part of it is we had less learned helplessness. If you are skilled in your own healthcare, whether it's in being able to identify your own issues, to be able to take care of your own needs, herbally speaking, and really to do your own assessments, if you're capable of doing this, you need them less. They don't like that. They need you to keep coming in and paying them. They need you to keep coming in and charging and charging and charging, so that way the hospitals can use federal tax dollars to keep themselves afloat while they give away 30% of their services free to illegals. Like this, it's just how it is. So if you are in that age bracket, you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to ensure that you educate yourself on how to care for your own medical needs and provide your own services. Right? So there are different ways you can do this. You can train with different people. I would really encourage you to seek out herbal and alternative ways of healing. And part of that is that you are less and less dependent upon the diagnostics and upon the opinions of people who are by default allegiant to a profession that's sleeping with the federal government. So the way that you do this is to educate yourself in herbal medicine and alternative medicine. I got a course online. It's 4 hours. It's $129. You don't have to train with me, but you can. Links in the description box below. The second is to grow your own food. There is something in the air. I think it's tree pollen. As far as growing your own food, I know that not everybody is going to be able to homestead. Homesteading is exhausting. If you don't do it right and you're not with somebody that loves and cares and supports you, you just signed yourself up for misery. Living rurally is not ruling cheaper. I guarantee you that. Because if you move rurally and you got more than 5 acres, you're going to have a tractor and implements unless you got about 30 children and 2 dozen mules and know how to harness them up. So it's not cheaper to live. But what you can do is to get a hold of some seeds, find crops, and rotate them throughout the year. Even if it's growing some kale in a little square patch that's not used in your backyard, or growing some tomatoes, or using some type of container to grow you something, every dollar that you grow in food, you're paying yourself. You're paying yourself in value-added, inflation-adjusted dollars. So that's a way to free yourself from their grip. And then 3, bartering, trading, and using alternative currencies. So bartering is a form of really cutting out the middleman, but it requires a lot of time, energy, and effort, in many cases, trying to find somebody to play ball with you. Not many people are willing to do that as much anymore, less so in rural areas. But you have a direct exchange without having to use a middleman, whether it's a credit card processor, a fiat currency, or something else, a value holder. You're just shifting value for value. So it saves you money in the grand scheme of things. Another way that you can utilize this system is to utilize alternative currencies. Like cash. I know that seems kind of weird now because everybody uses credit cards, which ultimately takes anywhere between 2 to 4% out of the pocket of the merchant during each transaction. And then by default, that's going to get passed on to you as the consumer. If you're not using credit cards, then you decrease your dependence upon them. If you use cash, like actual cash, that helps. But ultimately, that cash is only worth as much as what the feds say it is and how much BS money they print out of, thin air. It's one of the reasons why we're in this situation, this man-made depression that we're in. It's not going to get worse, it's only going to get worse, and it's not going to get better in so long as we continue to use their money. I don't think it's patriotic to use their BS money. Like, you can say that it is, it's fine, like, do whatever you want, but like, I value what works and what's historically money, which is gold. And ultimately, what is gold and precious metals, and why do these stores of value, why are they checks against inflation? And I'll tell you why. Because relatively speaking, they are a finite check against an infinite resource, debt instrument, also known as fiat currency. In order to counteract something that you're being taxed for, that you have no functional control over, and that ultimately is theft in every iteration, stealing your wealth away from you, the only way to counteract that is to take your infinite dollars and to put them in some type of finite vehicle, which could be precious metals, or it could be brass or lead, depending on what it is that you choose. But another instrument that people talk about is the legacy cryptocurrencies. And I realized several years ago, once my business was targeted by PayPal and got blocked by PayPal for a short amount of time. I realized that you have to have a way to transact value without having the permission needed of a third party just to exist. And so, like currently, I mean, I do use PayPal to process basically because there are very few options online that allow people to transact, in an online world. Increasingly, as more commerce is done online, cryptocurrencies are going to become a thing. And I know a lot of people are not comfortable with that, but you're not going to be able to transact gold for an online payment or an online service. It's just not going to happen. So effectively, in the internet-based world, you need a finite resource to check an infinite one, and that's really where the legacy cryptocurrencies come in my opinion. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not an economist, and I'm not an expert in these things. I just know, as someone who has run a business and who has also been classified in college level papers as a right-wing extremist. Yeah, I was like right up there next to Candace Owens. They had a list, I forget where it was. I had a student who sent it to me, as a matter of fact. But yeah, I got listed in a college paper as a right-wing extremist, like with several dozen other people. These are other content creators who were deemed right-wing extremists. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's a badge of honor right there. Party on. So using alternative currencies is another way to free yourself from this system. The fourth, be wary of the experts telling you need their services. Now you could say, Patriot Nurse, you just told us to buy your course. Look, you don't have to buy my course. I'll be the first person to tell you, you don't have to buy my course. Can you educate yourself for free? Yes, you can. March your happy little rear end down to the library and check out books for free. The service benefit that I offer is that I've given you in a condensed form, without your having to run around and try and find all these things, the benefit of my life experience and my professional experience working for over a decade as a nurse, both in the United States and then also working short-term medical missions internationally. So that's the value added that I provide, but you don't have to buy it from me. You can go and you can educate yourself so that you don't need services from other people. Specifically though, what I like to speak about is service industry based de-agency. De-agency. What is agency? Agency is the ability of people to act in their own best interest, of their own accord, and with their own responsibility. This is unfortunately one of the greatest casualties of a fiat currency system, is that as this fiat currency makes every little circle around the board, service-based industries and service-based providers effectively take over more and more and more of an economy as it becomes more of a debt-based economy versus a production-based economy. So when it comes to services, everything from veterinarians, excessive veterinary bills, to excessive mechanics bills, if somebody is telling you you have to do it this way, I'm typically usually pretty wary about that. Recently I was at the vet because my dog, we were noticing that his breath was a little bit meh. And we took him in to the vet just to kind of take a look over. I mean, can I do my own veterinary care? Yes, I can. Like four-legged critters have this similar setup as two-legged ones. But I'm fully owned that I don't know everything about canines. So anyway, I went in and was just kind of investigating what the options were. And long story short, after I got done, they wanted to charge me $1,000 to clean this dog's teeth and to potentially take teeth out of his head, even though there was no obvious sign that he needed it. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, no, I'm not giving you $1,000 to take my dog's teeth out of his head, to cut on his gums, to make him miserable, and to mess up his dentition and the shape of his jaw and make him not be able to eat. No. So part of the saying no process with service providers is being willing to own that you have a responsibility to act in your own best interest, and that your intuition, gosh darn it, is right most of the time. We're not stupid creatures inherently. We have a learned stupidity that has come with learned helplessness. And part of that learned helplessness is a function of job specialization in an economy where increasingly people produce less and less and are more specialized and more dependent. And then the last point here, ask for the resources that you paid for. Oh, friends, I am vehemently against taxing people for social welfare. Very, very much so. I believe that that's the responsibility of personal charity and of faith-based organizations. But here's the reality that a lot of people are running into. They've paid, and in many cases been in the highest tax brackets for years of their life, particularly if you're single and you don't have any children and you're a business owner, you're getting raked over the coals. So many people are finding themselves now as taxpayers who have paid into the system for years and years, not being able to make use of the resources that they have been taxed for and that they have been promised by the politicians would be there for them, right? I find it ludicrous, really, because when you consider it, all of this tax money is going over to Ukraine or to pay for illegals to come here and eat for effectively free, get their health care for effectively free, and get subsidized housing and all these like phones and stuff. And what about the American taxpayer? What about the American working poor? Where are their resources that they were promised? Oh, that's right, they're not available anymore. So in many cases, there are faith-based organizations and faith-based groups, particularly when it comes to pregnant women and children, that can help you navigate the bureaucracy and the BS. Now, some people might say that I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth on this. Ron Paul ran into the same thing effectively when people criticized him for voting on various different spending bills, and he basically said, look, I'm representing my constituency, the people of Texas. They have paid into this, and if they do not recoup benefit from it, then that's theft. Like, it's already extortion. Now it's like just straight up theft. So if you find yourself in need, for instance, of food or various different things, and you've reached out to various different charities, there may also be resources that you're locally able to access that maybe you just don't know how to navigate, and some of these groups can help you do that. So just an idea. And ironically enough, the library is a really good source for information on this, your local library, not just with bulletin boards, but also with programs, etc. And I'm not talking about the ones that have people dressing up in disco and drag and reading books to children. That's not the type of program I'm referencing here. I'm talking about access for clothes for children, or for school supplies for children, or shoes for children, things like that. Many times it's out there, it's just not known to people because working people have never had to ask before for help. We're in a depression, right? Like, let's call it what it is. We're in a depression, and if you have paid your entire life into something and it's there for you to use, I don't think personally that that's a value thing and a moral thing. To criticize people on for using things that they've paid into, you know. Unfortunately, that's the screwed up part of entitlement programs. And I think we need to distinguish a couple of things, right? Entitlements, someone can be entitled, meaning owed something that they paid for, without having an entitled attitude. Those are different things. But it's the nature of semantics, right? People have emotionally charged baggage associated with words. But a lot of people have entitlements owed to them, which they paid into, that nonetheless our founding fathers would not have considered ideal in the execution of good governance. But here we are. We are in a race to the bottom for our dollar. It is just a matter of time before this thing absolutely implodes, in my opinion. And the biggest priority that people are trying to, whether or not they realize that is what it is, they're trying to bail out a sinking ship with a teaspoon. And in times like this, we need each other. We need each other in times like this. And the community and the small tribe that we have, that's going to become more and more important in days to come. And a return to community-based living, not communes, but community-based, where instead of paying for experts, you consulted your friend, or you talked to a woman down the street who you knew had more expertise than you in something. We're going to have to return to these old ways, because our money's not going to be worth jack squat before we know it. It already isn't. You look at the purchasing power of $1 today versus way back when. I mean, I may be beating a dead horse on this just a little bit, but y'all know. You're smart people, you know. Particularly, let me encourage you, if you do not know the history of our fiat currency system and you don't know the history of the Federal Reserve, take 5 minutes of Wikipedia or Googling and do the deep dive, take the red pill and find out about it. Because there is no political solution to this, guys. This is an economic problem. And our rights were voted away on, I believe it was Christmas Eve in the 19 teens, was it 1913? I forget. Recently had a head injury in a car wreck, so you'll have to forgive me. You'll have to forgive me if I can't remember everything just right. I'm still recovering from that, by the way. This is going to take some time, but I'm trying my very best, and I appreciate y'all's prayers on that for sure. It has not been It has not been easy, and I've been trying to create, in the process of creating the next online course, the herbal course. But sustaining a head injury and having your car totaled and trying to rehab from that is not the easiest thing when speaking and synthesizing curriculum and synergizing things from various different modalities. When that's your role and that's your profession, having head injuries makes it pretty freaking difficult. So I'm powering on and I'm soldiering through, and I just really appreciate y'all's prayers, and I just want to thank you. So the 5 points that we talked about today in recap for asserting your own agency in the midst of their crazy. Number 1, provide your own services. Number 2, grow your own food. Number 3, barter, trade, and use alternative currencies. 4, being wary of the experts. And then 5, asking for resources that you paid for. So I hope the video was helpful for y'all today. If you did enjoy it, I hope you subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also stay with me and support me on Patreon, subscribe to our cryptocurrency, and PayPal. Got links below. Also, that online course is there. Guys, that online course is $129, takes about 4 hours. There's a lot of good curriculum in there and good exercises for you to work on. There's a downloadable workbook that goes with it. Friends, if you save yourself one trip to the doctor, for most insurance plans that I'm aware of, it just paid for itself. So educate yourself, even if it's not with me, make that a priority. We've got to free ourselves from their clutches. And the only way we do that is with investing in our own minds and in our own selves. Hope the video was helpful for y'all. Have a wonderful weekend. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.